Did you know COVID-19 is not the first pandemic of 2020?
How did the entire world get this fat this fast? Did everyone just become a bunch of gluttons and sloths? In 30 years, we have gone from being svelte to basically being unbelievably sick. That's what an epidemic, or a pandemic in this case, looks like. That's what plague, influenza, looked like.
In the current COVID-19 pandemic, governments mandate social distancing and good hand hygiene, but little attention is paid to the potential impact of diet on health outcomes. Poor diet is the most significant contributor to the burden of chronic lifestyle-related diseases like obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. As of May 30, 2020, the CDC reported that among COVID-19 cases, the two most common underlying health conditions were cardiovascular disease, 32%, and diabetes, 30%.
Diseases of obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, lipid problems, heart disease, constitute what we classically call the metabolic syndrome, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which affects 10% of all women, cancer, and also dementia. The obesity travels with those diseases, but the obesity is a marker for those.
What that means for you is this. If you've over the years developed one of those pre-existing conditions and you were to get COVID-19, you are at a higher risk. And that's what our authorities told us at the beginning of the pandemic. Now that brings me up to my next topic. How did we get an obesity pandemic?
If it was just gluttons and sloths, how do you explain the obese 6-month-old? We have an epidemic of obese 6-month-olds in this country. They don't diet and exercise. You're going to call them a bunch of gluttons and sloths? This goes way beyond the question of personal responsibility. The reason we're in this epidemic can be summed up with one statement, one idea that has become so pervasive, that has become sacrosanct, that it has become dogma. And that statement is, a calorie is a calorie. It's the first thing dietitians learn in dietary school. If you eat more than you burn, you will gain weight. If you eat less than you burn, you will lose weight. And it doesn't matter if those calories come from carrots or cheesecake. The bottom line is, a calorie is a calorie. You eat too much, you exercise too little, and that's the mantra, and guess what? It doesn't work.
A major factor that drives the pathophysiology of metabolic syndrome is insulin resistance, defined as an impaired biological response to insulin, the hormone that regulates blood glucose levels. A study of patients with COVID-19 with pre-existing type 2 diabetes showed that those with better regulated blood glucose control fared better than those with poor blood glucose control. It pretty much means the following.
Fast foods, fast preparing, fast eating, and fast causing disease too.
If you don't want to be part of the metabolic syndrome conditions, you got to stop eating processed food and just eat real food, really, PFF. That's what this whole thing is about. To scare you just a little bit, so you put that down right now and you go for the PFF. And here's something you need to know. 71% of available food in the USA is classified as ultra processed. And all that stuff that you probably have in your house, which I hope you don't, is likely to drive hyperinsulinemia and inflammation, especially in those with metabolic syndrome, which means that if right now you're stockpiling on ultra processed food, you will more likely develop one of the metabolic syndrome conditions, which is going to increase your risk of ending up in the hospital if you are to get COVID-19. You might not have control not getting COVID-19, but you do have the control over what goes in your body right now. Because the healthier your body is, the less chances of you of ending up in the hospital and maybe not coming out alive.